it says at the top of the screen. It says at the top of the screen that it's showtime. So we're live, and it's really good to see you again. I will introduce myself for a couple of minutes before I bring Romesh onto screen. If you've watched any of these before, and I know we have some people who pop up pretty regularly, you'll know that I interview and talk to and find out about the businesses of members of my networking group Connect. And this morning I'm really excited because I'm going to be talking to Romesh Jayaseelanayagam from the FD Consultants. And Romesh is a long-standing chief financial officer for various companies and finance director and accountant back in the day. And Romesh runs a network of finance directors for companies. And what interests me about that is that that's my blind spot. That's my weak spot. These are the bits that I really don't understand. Marketing, the people side of businesses, that's where I'm most comfortable. But the numbers behind it is where I'm least comfortable. And that's what Romesh does. I'm looking at another screen at the moment. So I'm just checking my feeds to make absolutely sure that this has gone live. But it looks like it has before I bring Romesh on screen. And when I do, I'll invite you to ask him questions. So if you've got any questions about business finance or what a finance director does or how a finance director can help, then please pop them in the comments, which are over there for me, and I'll ask Romesh to answer them. I'm going to bring Romesh on stage now, and I'm really excited to be talking to you, Romesh. I hope I've introduced you in the correct way, but if you weren't listening, Romesh Jayaseelanayagam, who is a chief financial officer for various businesses, a finance director for businesses, and runs a network of finance directors. So for companies who are scaling up and haven't got a full-time finance director role, Romesh will source the appropriate, qualified, experienced, right person for your business to be able to come and fill that role. Is that correct, Romesh? Have I got all of that right?
Hey, Steph. Yeah, thank you. That was a really nice introduction, and brilliant that you had a very good go at pronouncing my surname as well. Not many people do that, so I really appreciate the effort there.
How right did I get it? I wasn't sure.
It was excellent. Yeah, so it's Romesh Jayaseelanayagam, but look, it's Romesh. I'm very happy to be known as Romesh. But answering your question, it was a very nice, straightforward introduction in terms of what I do and what my group of consultants try and help growing businesses with.
When people start a business, if we start with this, I think when I first started a business, which was 2007, I had been employed all my life, and in the last few years of my employment, we had an on-site bookkeeper, a bookkeeper who was employed by the company, and I, to my shame, actually didn't know what an accountant did, because I'd been in an employed role all my life. We'd had a bookkeeper to manage the books of the business, but I didn't really know the difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant. And I hadn't ever been exposed to a finance director in a business. And I wonder if it would be useful for people to just understand, if they are running a business and have an accountant, where does a finance director fit in? What's the difference, and what does an FD do?
That's an excellent question. And yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings in that area. So bookkeepers and accountants, whether they're internal or external, do a fantastic job. They're putting the transactions, they're recording the information that's flowing through the business in a way that is structured And the bookkeepers. So if I address both roles separately for a second, so bookkeepers are transactional, mainly doing the recording of information in a structure so that the business can see its historical performance. That's what they're doing. They're making payments or assisting in making payments, doing all the operational stuff, potentially chasing debtors for cash, managing bank reconciliations, that kind of stuff, the kind of day-to-day management of finances. Now, an accountant is someone, if they're external, often they are potentially doing your statutory annual accounts, doing your tax returns, and those are very technical tasks which need to be done for compliance to make sure we're following rules and regulations. And those are core important activities which your business needs to run. If you like, they're the foundation of what a business needs. Now, I think that with growing businesses, startups, scale-ups, SMEs, sometimes there's finance can be perceived as a headache. So ultimately, sometimes the owner will do a bit of the accounting themselves. Sometimes they'll be spending money on bookkeepers and accountants and not seeing the value in that expenditure, because ultimately it's something they have to do. And actually, they don't feel that the data, the information that's being produced is actually helping them in any way. Now, as a finance director, we're responsible for all aspects of finance. Now, if you imagine a business as a wagon wheel, okay, I see finance as the kind of center of that wagon wheel, with every department's activities flowing into the center. And the reason for that is that essentially anything that happens in your business, however big or small it is, will ultimately flow through finance and through your accounts and through your numbers. And a solid business will want to kind of have good controls, good processes, good numbers to kind of, and just make sure that essentially everything is being swept up and put in the right place. That in itself is something we can help with, because we can set up, as finance directors, we can set up the right systems, the right process. We can oversee and manage bookkeepers. We can manage, mentor, develop them so that they're doing their jobs well. The owners, business leaders, founders, CEOs can take a step back and go, okay, we're comfortable with the way the controls are working, the processes are working, and we feel that everything is in safe, capable hands. And I think taking away the pain of that and the headache of that is one area we can help. But crucially, and sorry, I know I'm kind of rabbiting on a little bit here.
I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying understanding.
Okay, thank you. Crucially, where a finance director comes in is we understand the business. We take time to critically understand the business. We spend time with the leader or the leadership team. We understand what the business is, what it's trying to do. And we build off a solid foundation of those numbers and essentially drive off that to produce data which is helpful and meaningful for business leadership. And if I was going to boil it down into a sentence or two, in fact, one simple sentence, we can help business leaders make better decisions quicker. So if you've got really good numbers, if they're presented in the right way, if they're presented in a way that is relevant, transparent, easy to understand, and meaningful to business leadership, then as a team, we can spot opportunities, we can identify weaknesses, and then we can address them So, for example, we might be able to, look at a revenue stream and say, do you know what? We're spending a lot of our time growing this revenue stream, but actually the profitability of it is very low. This revenue stream, an alternative one, is extremely profitable, and we're spending less than 25% of our time, as an example, trying to build and develop that. So really, it's enabling the business team to kind of hone and develop an understanding, a greater understanding and pinpoint accuracy as to what's going to make their business better and what can help the business grow, thrive, and also defensively, how you can minimize activity which isn't particularly helpful.
That's given me a lot to think about. I'm just going to quickly reflect on Damien's comment. And Damien, first thing, sorry to hear you're back in hospital again. I'm reading your comment. I will, and I know you've dictated this. If there are any spelling errors in there, I will definitely make the connection for you. And yes, Damien, who runs a number of businesses in South Wales, has worked with finance directors before, and it's been very helpful for him. Damien, I know get well soon isn't sorry, Romesh, I know Damien terribly well. I know get well soon isn't the right I know it's not the right expression to use, but yeah, good to hear from you, and thank you for watching with us. I think the next question I'm going to ask you, Romesh, going on from that then, is when does a business know, or how does a business know when, to phrase it better, that they might need a finance director? Because I guess for a lot of people starting, or maybe a lot of people in my world, a lot of people start on their own and they'll have support from a bookkeeper and an accountant and so on. When or how does someone know when? How does a business know when they need to engage with a finance director? They should work with a finance director. Have you got any advice about that?
I do. I would say that every situation is unique. Every business is different, and the personnel who run businesses also have different goals and objectives. So there's no one simple answer, but if I can maybe make a few points for business owners to think about. If you have, there are so many scenarios ultimately, right? So I'll pick a few to maybe talk about. One is perhaps where a business has grown so quickly, a really good positive scenario where the ownership, the leadership team feels they're maybe losing a little bit of control. The number of transactions has increased, the level of activity. They might have started recruiting quite a few more people. A common issue we see is in that phase of growth, lots of money goes out, actually, because even though you're receiving more income, you're spending more on staff, on systems, etc., on products or services to fulfill that greater need. But actually the cash flow the net cash flow, your profitability, doesn't seem to be changing. And that might be a time to kind of have a conversation with a finance director, a fractional finance director. If we can talk about potentially why a fractional finance director is a helpful person to speak to. But I think at that point we can unpick what's going on. Maybe I can turn the question slightly, Steph, and use some examples with the fact that if you are growing really, really quickly and cash isn't doing that well, maybe you need to have a forecast. Maybe you need someone to turn your strategy into a business plan and a business model. what we find is by sitting down with business leadership, with business owners, we can translate their ideas and thoughts, goals and objectives into black and white numbers, which means we can challenge them constructively. We can challenge the assumptions because, for example, you might have a growth plan of X% for the next year, which is great. And you might have an accompanying goal to bring on board salespeople to fulfill those targets. Now, it might be that if you bring those salespeople on too quickly, you run out of money or your profitability falls in a way that you're not comfortable with. What we can do is plot that out. We can test your assumptions and say maybe we can actually highlight a situation where actually, gosh, if you get all these people in from day one, or even in a staggered way, in the way that you are suggesting, you will run out of cash in 3 to 4 months, which is a massive problem. Perhaps can we look to stagger them more evenly, the onboarding of new staff, etc., so that you can manage the cash flows but still fulfill those growth targets? And I think getting that balance right, seeing things in numbers, enables you to challenge constructively. As I said, it's not about trying to pick holes for the sake of it, but it's really to try and find the best result for the business. And of course, looking into the future is so uncertain, it's so hard. And I'm not going to pretend for a second that we can predict the future exactly, but we can provide tools that can help. And the more you understand and can control, the more impact you can have.
I think that's incredibly insightful to me, because I've watched businesses do it, expand too quickly, and friends of mine as well, particularly in the tech sector, and also going back almost 30 years now. I remember one of my managing directors simply picking a number out of the air that he expected sales to grow the next year and that our targets would all increase, and there was no science or logic behind it. The sort of, well, work harder then logic, and that became demotivating to the sales team as well, because there was no logic applied to why we would increase sales. I remember it was increase sales by 20% next year with no insight as to how that should be done. And I presume you can help people by, yes, you say you don't have a crystal ball, but at least applying some science to their observations. One of the things that I've been meaning to ask you in this conversation, again, quite a long time ago, a friend of mine who runs now a very big business, when he first had the opportunity to tender for a very big opportunity, not in the public sector, but in a vast a television network as it goes, he took on a fractional finance director at the time. And in fact, when they went for the presentation to present to the company as to why they should be the supplier, he took the FD along with him, and has always said that was one of the things that helped swing it for them, because the company that they were tendering to work with, or the organization rather that they were tendering to work with, wanted to make sure that their supplier had longevity, as well as that they were actually going to still be there in a couple of years' time. Is that some of the other sort of things that a decent FD can help with?
Yeah, I think so. We can add a layer of credibility for external tenders, for fundraising when you're talking to investors. I think ultimately third parties who are wanting to deal with your business, wanting to provide your business with business, if that makes sense, or to invest money in your business, they want the great story, how amazing your product or service is, what your future plans are, and all of that stuff. A business owner and the leadership team generally will be excellent at, because that's what they do and they do it well. Where we can help is actually say, look, we are part of the team and we are looking at all of the things in the background. We're helping control and manage, and we are looking ahead, and we're critically assessing the parts of the business so that there are no unanticipated consequences of actions, which gives, for example, in the case of investors, real peace of mind. It's great to have a story. Well, we're going to grow by X% every year. We're going to give you an amazing return, Mr. Investor. And that's all well and good, but you've got to back that up. And the management team will be able to do that with their ability, their experience, what they've achieved to date. And that story is really important. But actually, how are you managing your finances? How are you managing your processes and controls? And I don't just mean finance. I mean everything in your business. All of the structures and systems, are they robust? Are they protected against risk, against errors, mistakes, fraud? And these things are really, really important. And in the case of a tender, the more comprehensive a tender, where we are really showing that keenness to win the award, to scientifically prove that we are the best, in terms of that aspect, the best solution for that business, then I think we can help critically as well. And Steph, I realized I hadn't quite answered your first question, or your initial question, as to, when should a company look at finance directors? And we've covered a few examples there. But I think one other really important thing to say is that business leaders, CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs, and their teams are really good at what they're doing. They're often excellent at selling, building, maintaining relationships with their customers and growing in that way. They're really good at managing their teams, etc. But they're probably not very good, and I say this with respect, because not everyone's great at everything, right? And I wouldn't pretend that I am, but they're not great at the numbers. They don't understand the processes within finance. And because of that, it's a little bit of a black hole in their minds. There's a feeling of uncertainty, a feeling of lack of control. And as I alluded to earlier, there's a cost to managing your finance as well. So what we help with, and it's an intangible benefit really, is we take that headache and pain away from business leadership and say, look, your value isn't in thinking about finances and accounting and all that frankly boring stuff, right? You're good at what you do. Focus on that. We'll assist you going forwards with that as and how you would like us to, and we can make suggestions, but we can manage the back office, the kind of engine room, if you like, the foundations, and we'll turn the numbers from being a problem to actually being value added and driving the business forwards. And I think that's the key. If you run your finance team well, and it might be external, internal, it might be one person, it might be many people, whatever the size of your business. If you use the data that your business is providing, and remember, everything flows through your business. If you use it well, you can make better decisions, you make them quicker, and your business will thrive as a result. That's proactive and it's defensive. A lot of businesses at the moment are struggling because, right, times are a bit tough at the moment for various reasons. They're looking to manage cash flows. Get someone to help you manage those cash flows commercially, realistically. And I think that will give you a bit more peace of mind. And it's better to know 3 months in advance of a problem than a week in advance, I would say. Much less stressful. It's a mental health thing as well. And we all know the pain and struggles that business owners have. It's hard. It's a lonely place. So we're there to help.
Again, that's an incredible point and sets me off on a different course than where I was going to go, because business continuity. So people often think about business continuity in terms of sort of famously locally, we had some floods in this town 20 or so years ago, which affected the businesses of a lot of people on Witney High Street, for example. So people then started thinking about moving their computers off the floor so that they wouldn't get flooded again, the computers wouldn't get ruined. But business continuity then must come in the form of having someone with insight to the finance as well, because you've politely said that a lot of business leaders and people in the business are very good at what they do, but they're not necessarily good at the finance. And I find that a lot of entrepreneurs are deal makers or salespeople, very good salespeople, or very good charismatic leaders of people. And very often I'm not going to, you used the word boring, I won't insult you by saying that the numbers are boring, but they don't give their attention to that side of things. They're a lot of us get a buzz out of making the next deal, making the next sale. That's where we've grown up and that's what we're good at. But it actually takes a calming, more sensible voice like yourself to say, yeah, that's great, and let's think about what would happen if this happened. Of course, our biggest example, well, in my lifetime, has been when everyone's businesses were shut down 5.5 years ago, and people had to just stop what they were doing for a period. No one could have foreseen that more than a couple or a few months in advance, and most of us didn't. But I presume you can have overall controls in place which at least give a business a bit of a fighting chance if things have to change very quickly. And I've worded the question in a very long way there, but I presume you can really help with business continuity and ensuring that businesses are ready for any crisis that might occur.
Yeah, I think so. I will answer that. I just want to address the point on numbers being boring. Now, just to clarify that, I think getting the basics right can be dull, and it can be a bit painful, and we want to take that pain away. But a good finance director makes the numbers exciting and relevant and commercial and transparent. And that's where I think the power of getting a good finance director is critical, or can really, really help your organization, however big or small. Our group of consultants helps startups, scale-ups, SMEs from literally zero turnover to 50 million turnover. It's a wide range, but it's making it relevant. And one of the key lessons I've learned is not being over technical. We don't try and dazzle people with technical terms. It's important to understand them from our perspective, but I understand that business owners, business leadership don't need that. What they need is, well, so what? Why is this important to me? Why is this important to the business? So it's not about dazzling people with accounting terms or trying to sound overly complex. In fact, quite the opposite. Make things simple, transparent, and very understandable. And in that way, you can make the clarity of the situation much sharper. And again, just to reinforce the idea that you can help business owners make better decisions quicker. And to address your point on business continuity, yeah, I think it's planning ahead. So you can forecast for a number of reasons. You can forecast to budget to control your costs. You can forecast way ahead to kind of get some investment in, so that you can, make the business look really attractive to investors in a credible, well thought out way. You can also do it to manage your cash flows and manage your growth. And as I said, it's complicated, right? There are so many variables. There are so many aspects and issues that business leaders have to contend with, that some which they control and lots they don't. And so trying to put all that together in your head is really, really difficult. And that's why, for me, putting it on in a financial model just gives clarity, and it allows you to sit back, take the helicopter view and say, hey, is that really where we want to go? And if it is, brilliant. But are there challenges to that? And what do we need to do? It's far better, again, I would stress from my perspective, if we are in advance aware of potential problems so that we've got time to deal with them. And I think that addresses the business continuity point, because if we have a forecast, a plan, and the business leadership team says, well, we're going to grow by X, and we're looking at what's happened in the last few months, and we're looking at the wider economy, we might challenge them and say, well, is it really going to grow by that much? Is this a real reflection of what we can achieve? Because there's no point kind of having really, really aggressive, overly exciting plans if they're not achievable. I think that can be demotivating in itself, as well as dangerous for a stability of a business. So yeah, I think, again, we can help in that kind of scenario.
I'll pause for a second and remind our viewers that I'm speaking this morning with Romesh Jayaseelanayagam. And I hope I've done a better job that time. From the FD Consultants. And if you have any questions for Romesh, I'm going to make it a little bit more personal for a second, but if you've got any questions about the role of a finance director, or whether your business might need a finance director, or any other questions, please pop them in the comments, which are over there for me, and I will address Romesh with them before the end of this. We've probably got another 10 or 15 minutes to go, so you've got time to ask your questions. I'll ask you, Romesh, how you now run the FD Consultant. How did you get there? What's been your career which led to that? And then after I've asked that question, I'll come on to ask you a little bit more about the FD Consultant and what the business actually does.
Sure. So I qualified as an accountant many years ago with EY, one of the top 4 accounting firms, and I was in the London office, and I had a brilliant experience qualifying as an accountant at EY. Had a good time. I learnt a lot, had some excellent training. I then moved to a FTSE 100 business called Bunzl, where I was in various senior finance roles for about 5-6 years. In 2008, I pivoted my career to the world of startups, scale-ups, and SMEs. I was finance director for a business called London Biopackaging, which was a startup, in the sense that I turned up in a suit on my first day. There were people walking around barefoot. So, it was I was like, wow, this is different. I'll have to adjust. And that was the key, really. I had to adjust to, I suppose, real life outside of global corporate companies. Now, I'd had brilliant experiences, and I feel I had amazing training at those large businesses and organizations. But I used those skills to kind of help with the decision making and the business health of LBP, and that business thrived. It did really well. I moved to another business called Student Cribs, which was a student accommodation business. And again, it was a true startup, and we grew that to a significant size whilst I was there. And I learned a lot practically from all the challenges that startups, scale-ups, SMEs have. You never have enough time. You're always sprinting. And it's a high level of energy. But I really enjoyed the opportunity to make a real impact on a business. I really enjoyed the quick decision making, the agility that you need, but it was fun doing that as well. So I really got a passion for this kind of business, and I love helping businesses grow, and I'd hung around with entrepreneurs for quite a long time. So I felt, the FD consultant was the next logical step. I felt there was a real need amongst startups, scale-ups, and SME businesses to get quality financial support at an affordable, easy entry kind of price. Ultimately, I truly believe that if you get a good fractional finance director, wherever they're from, if they're doing what they should be, then they'll make a massive difference to the business if you give them time, if you work with them, and you'll get a fraction of the cost of someone full time. And that's the value I think we add.
And the sorts of businesses that the FD consultant works with, then what sort of businesses do you have in your stable? I mean, but by all means, if you're free to, then please do name and shout out any of them. But if you're not free to, then just let us know the sorts of businesses that you work with.
Yeah, we consider ourselves sector agnostic, so we cover businesses across so many sectors: live event spaces, marketing, communications, property, residential and commercial. We've assisted chocolate makers, Swiss watch makers.
Yeah.
It's a real mix. Businesses that protect IP, town planners, one-man bands. There might be consultants that need some high-level conversational help and support. So more light touch. And really, we're learning all the time as well, and we're trying to take that knowledge and help our clients. We believe we're really good at what we do. We've got some good experience, expertise from our time doing all the stuff we've done, but we're humble. We want to keep learning. We want to stay in touch with what's going on in the world and technology, and just do whatever we can to really help our clients and our businesses thrive.
So a massive part of what you do must be learning about the businesses that you and your colleagues work with then. And actually, I mean, I find great joy in finding out about other people's businesses. I'm guessing from what you've said that you're the same then, just learning about all of these different businesses in different sectors.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and so many different characters, people, personalities. Yeah, I think what we're trying to do is build relationships. And as you probably know, Steph, finance people aren't known for having, the most charismatic personalities. And I'm not pretending that, I'm or we're the most charismatic people, but I think I genuinely feel that our consultants, well, I know we're really passionate about the businesses we help and support. We really care. We really feel we're part of the team, but we want to build relationships, and we think we're really good at that. And if our clients and teams are open to building that partnership, we can work together to make things better for those businesses. And that's something that's really, really important to us.
So the penultimate question then, I've met you originally. We were introduced by the very wonderful John Scotcher. He passed your name on to me a few years ago now. You've been networking in various guises and in various places in those few years that I've known you. has networking been an important part of the business? Do you and the other consultants in the FD consultant network in various parts of the country, both in real life and virtually? Is networking an important activity for a fractional FD?
It's really, really important, and we've had a great discussion about this on my own podcast, right?
We did.
Yeah, we did an excellent episode where we heard your views on it. And if I could do a quick plug for that, Steph, that would be amazing. Yeah, so just very quickly, sorry for the plug, guys, but I co-host a podcast for entrepreneurs, business owners, founders, leadership teams called Strive and Thrive, where we cover all kinds of subjects. It's not just finance, and one of them was networking. And Steph was a wonderful guest on that episode. And to answer your question, absolutely, networking is really, really important in businesses like ours, where relationships are key. They're really, really important, because frankly, as a finance director, you can't do your job well if you don't build trust. And to build trust, you need to work on that relationship. You need to listen. You need to have all those kind of skills, emotional intelligence, etc. But networking and building relationships in a wider sense is so important, because I learn from so many people, and I kind of approach networking with the attitude of, how can I help you? When I first started the FT consultant, I started networking. I was new to the idea of networking, and I was struck by a number of people early on in my journey who went out of their way to give me very, very helpful suggestions, thoughts, pointers, direction, and introductions, which were invaluable. And that's the way I like to approach networking. You run a brilliant group at Network Retreat, Steph. As you said, I've been there for a number of years now, and it's a really good bunch of people running diverse businesses. And listen, I think with networking, some people approach it in the sense, well, I'm going out there to get some sales. And I think it doesn't quite work like that. I think you do it to build meaningful relationships, and stuff might come your way. But actually, especially if you're helping other people, I think what goes around comes around. That's my way of thinking about things. And, you set up a really good constant level of high-level conversations where we share ideas, thoughts, and we're in an ever-changing world, right? And it's really hard to keep up. So having the power of a collective. And I think it's important to try lots of different things, different types of networking, in person, virtual, but it's all really, really beneficial. But it's a long-term game, I think, and it's something I really enjoy. So why not lean into it?
Obviously, I've seen you pop up at various events, Best Business Women Awards, of course, where we'll both be in. Sharon's just reminded me, in literally a couple of weeks' time, I think.
Yes, looking forward to that one.
I am too. And Damien asks if that's the right link for Strive and Thrive on Spotify. I've already checked whilst you were just talking just then, and indeed that is the right link, Damien. And I've on both LinkedIn and Facebook, I've popped the link to the LinkedIn link for Strive and Thrive as well. So Damien, do go and check it out. Subscribe. Loads of great conversations on Strive and Thrive, which is hosted by Romesh and Mike. But it's a really good series. I was really flattered to be approached to be a guest on there. So do go and check it out, Damien. And good to hear from you as well, by the way, Damien.
Thank you, Damien. And again, best wishes for your recovery.
Actually, there's two Damiens. Sorry, so the Damien that's just asked is a different Damien to the one that's in
Oh,
our
okay,
yeah,
okay,
that Damien
okay.
Bridgman will take the wishes, I'm sure.
Right. Okay.
To wind that up then, Romesh, the people who are watching and listening this either live or on replay, where would be a good place for them to connect with you?
I would love to hear from you. I'm on LinkedIn, Romesh. If you type in Jey, you'll probably find me quite quickly. Or if you look up the FD consultant, where I'm sure Steph will share links for that. But we're on the fdconsultant.com. Please do reach out. I'm really happy to help. As I said, it's something we're passionate about, and we really understand the challenges that are out there right now. And it's not to kind of sell our products or services. It's genuinely trying to get out there and support businesses, because it's so important for our society right now.
And the feedback that I've always had about you, Romesh, has been about your helpfulness to the businesses that you're either working with or the other businesses in Connect that I know you've provided ad hoc support to as well. So on that,
thank you, Steph. That's very kind.
No, not at all. Thank you for joining me this morning. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I really have. I'm grateful to all the Damiens who've been listening to us, wherever they are, and everyone else who's been joining in as well. Thank you, Romesh. I will, in a second, I'll take you off stage whilst I just wait for the stream to finish, and then I'll chat to you again. But thank you very much, Romesh, for joining us this morning. And if any of you have got any other questions, actually, let's take Romesh off stage so I can say this. Thank you, Romesh. If any of you have got any outstanding questions, if you're watching on the replay on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, then please ask there. There's the comments there. Ask them. I'll make sure I tag Romesh. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.